VP for Package 7, which is the civils and stations work on CVL. We've recently commissioned the Treherbert line, and today a good opportunity to come here and talk about sort of the challenges we've had, what the route is, what CVL is, and where it fits within CVL, the importance of that route, and essentially what challenges we've faced, and how we kind of dealt with it, and what kind of lessons at a very high level we kind of took away from it. The intention is also to kind of present something that can be taken away and applied across other programs. So we haven't gone too much into CVL specific things, as you could say. So firstly, a bit about CVL. As Nick mentioned, we've probably had a few presentations on CVL, but it's always good to kind of reflect on where it kind of sits. So Amy's currently delivering towards the tail end of it about £1 billion worth of infrastructure in the Welsh Valleys. It's probably the biggest investment that Welsh Railways have had on the valleys. So it's basically connecting a lot of the Cardiff to various communities across the valleys. So we've given some upgrades. The data's on the slides, but probably say the key things is to look at, we've done 2 new stations, one at Croyce Road, one at Boottown, which is at Cardiff. We've got 68 station upgrades, 13 having newer extended platforms, which are all CSM significant. Those 13 stations are all CSM significant, with 7 of them being both authorizable and CSM significant. We've currently wired about 170 kilometers of overlay. Just to give you a bit of perspective, that's like taking it to mainland Europe, probably up north to Scotland, and probably about the length of, probably slightly more than the length of Great Western Main Line and Crossrail included. So that's just the linear distance. But yeah, just to give you a scale of the program, that's sort of what we've done. We've also used some innovative kind of approach to electrification, such as discontinuous electrification, PES sections, catenary-free sections. We've built 2 main high voltage substations, Union Park and Tonteg. Integrated out to our control center, which is basically a ROC, essentially controlling all of the CVL network. That's up there in the inset. The photo at the top, you can see the can't point at the thing, can I? That's it. It's basically what you see at the top is a Tapswell depot, and towards the bottom end of the picture, you can see a blue kind of building. That's a CVL ICC. It's Integrated Control Center. Track works and footbridges, and the Tapswell depot, which is a massive depot. That's as you can see the scale of it. Has been built along with massive upgrades to Canton depot, which both have rolling stock charging capabilities for the new rolling stock that's been introduced. So I think the overarching benefits has been that bringing the network, making the network better for future and delivering value for the Welsh people. That's CVL in a nutshell. A bit about how we managed it. This carries across the Treherbert route and across CVL really. So the client has been the Welsh Government, Transport for Wales, as opposed to DFT, but DFT has been a very important stakeholder for us. And Amy has acted as the delivery managing agent. We've taken care of the program management. We've managed the infrastructure delivery partners, who are the main organizations, the select few organizations contracted by TfW to fully deliver the Core Valley lines. We've undertaken the engineering integration and assurance and managing the entry into service. This includes interfacing with the ORR, the DFT, appointing ASPOs and ABPOs to assess CSM and NTSN. We've also undertaken the duties of PC and PD on the project. We've self-delivered the OLE for all of the Core Valley lines. And Amy also, as ARW, we also are the asset management and maintenance organization for the core valley lines. Infrastructure operations, we work closely with the infrastructure operator, who's TFW Rail Limited, another organization that sits under TFW. And we're also responsible for the safety of the line once the program is commissioned. That map kind of gives you a bit more scale of CVL. So essentially, this is kind of the map, and you've got Cardiff right at the bottom right corner. And it's basically connecting Cardiff to the four main heads of the valleys towards the top. You've got Treherbert, then you've got from bottom left corner, you've got Treherbert and Aberdare, Merthyr and Rhymney. We've delivered the lines leading up to Treherbert and Merthyr, and we're in the process of doing the Rhymney line. So it's the R2P line. And I've just taken a snippet of the Treherbert line to just show you a bit more in expanded view of it. The key stations we commissioned for the Treherbert route was Dinas Rhondda and the Treherbert station itself. They were both CSM significant and authorizable station, along with Innisfwen, which is currently being delivered. So yeah, Amy basically managed we undertook the activities that Network Rail would undertake from an assurance perspective, from a delivery perspective, and as a managing agent. We had other infrastructure delivery partners, Alan Griffiths, who did the main civils work, GCOM, so the telecoms, consulting, which did the design for, Amy Consulting did the design for the ENP and civils and other aspects of it. So yeah, significant piece of work. There's a little video which kind of talks about the...
After 9 months of transformation work across the line, we're pleased to reopen the Treherbert line to passenger services. We're currently at Treherbert station, where there's been significant transformation works over the last 9 months. This includes the installation of a new railway track, brand new station platform, OLE going up to power the new electric trains, and brand new drainage as well. All of this work allows us to increase the frequency of trains that we can run on the Treherbert line. We've been installing OLE across the line, which is overhead line equipment. This powers our new electric trains. As you can see behind me, we're at Aston Rhondda, and lots of OLE has been installed throughout the station and across the rest of the line. We'll be electrifying the overhead lines from spring/summer 2024. We'll advise lineside neighbours when we're going to be electrifying the lines to make sure that you're aware when the equipment is going live. So we're here at Dinas Rhondda station, which has seen a significant transformation programme as part of the South Wales Metro. We've installed a brand new track passing loop, so a new train line passes through the station. We've installed a brand new station platform, which is the one we're currently standing on, which serves the new rail line, and we've also installed a brand new access for all bridge. This allows access via steps and lifts to each platform to improve the overall accessibility of the station.
So that's the constructed Treherbert station, before and after picture. It's got all the scopes. So essentially a new platform, upgrade to the bayside to the right, and essentially access the terminus platform for terminus station for the Treherbert route, so the trains can turn around. This line, as I mentioned, was closed for 9 months, which meant that they could not run trains from Pontypridd all the way up to Treherbert. Which means a lot of the communities, there were alternate means of transport down to Ponty using buses and more expensive modes that had to be set up by Transport for Wales. So the program was under a tremendous amount of pressure to commission within a period of time, which was massively compressed. So Amy had to come up with all the ways of delivering that piece of work, but whilst not compromising on safety, achieving all sorts of compliance, or forms of compliance, and meeting all the requirements set by the client. And that's the station at Dinas Rhondda. The before picture was taken in November last year, something like that. Yeah, and then that's the completed station. Full scope of work included the footbridge, the lift, step-free access for PRM users, full compliance to the NTSN's safety, in terms of signage, PA system, NTIs on next train indicators, new lighting and fencing and all sorts of the additional works around to ensure that it's segregated. So it's been a massive piece of work, and it's also commissioning two stations. It's the same teams working over and over. So commissioning two stations at the same time was quite challenging. And some of the key challenges I wanted to talk about, I've kind of mapped it into some certain groups. I'm happy to take questions towards the end, make it more interactive sessions. And if you want to know more about how we did things in a certain way, please do ask. So in terms of scope and requirements, when the onset of the project started, we had very high level scope from our clients, and it was down to Amy to go down and dissipate that into a robust set of requirements, which we then managed, which we had to manage. So I think that was a challenge, and then delivering a minimum viable product which complies to all the requirements, the standards, and ensures and is safe for the rail, safe to bring up for commissioning, and was safe to passengers was a challenge. The other bit was Amy was entering a new territory here in terms of in building in Wales. In Wales, we had a new client who is fairly new to this kind of investment and this kind of managing this kind of program. So that was quite interesting to work with them and bring up the key requirements and establish a baseline. We also had requirements from multiple compliance requirements from multiple bodies. There were requirements to comply to Network Rail standards, DFT specs, and obviously the NTSNs. From an environmental and human factors perspective, like the scale of the program, £1 billion worth of investment, and delivering all of that for £1 billion. And when you put it into perspective, it is quite a lot. It's quite a lot of money, but it's also quite a lot of investment in infrastructure delivery. So that and the timescales in which we had to achieve that was quite significant. Remote working. So a lot of our teams were based across the country, and some even designed, some of the OLE was designed in Spain. Some of the aspects of track was designed in India. So remote working and making sure the information from site is available to these teams doing the work, and ensuring that full visibility of the actual challenges out on site is available to the designers, and ensuring people are aware of everything they need to do to comply to make sure that it's a working design. Use of new tools and systems. We implemented a lot of. I think this was also during the change during the COVID times, and we had to implement new tools and new systems which we could manage the requirements. We used extensively. We used the PIM models to collaborate with various teams across the world, and bringing that and making sure that works was always quite a challenge, but we had to overcome. From an environmental perspective, the location of the project, like if you've been to Brecon Beacons and the Core Valley lines, it's all green. It's all green everywhere, and it was down to Amy to make sure that that's not impacted in any adverse way. So we had to ensure that our designs take into account the surroundings, ensure that it's not impinging onto the beauty of the landscape. Obviously, the communities in Wales, they hadn't seen. There's a lot of impact on them in terms of the station upgrades. There are stations which have not been touched for decades. They don't have any PA, so we're introducing PA, additional lighting. So there is sort of noise and all sorts of. It's a different sort of thing. Some people like it, some people don't. So it's a lot of interface there. And station expansion and land acquisition. A lot of the areas around there was under conservation and protected. So ensuring we've done enough to mitigate or control any of the impact on the environment was quite crucial. Standards and compliance. We had a project requirement to comply to all of Network Rail standards, use them as code of practice. So we had to ensure that we're doing that while at the same time delivering a minimum viable product. We had to manage our interrogations and also ensure that we challenge owners' requirements from various codes of practice and the standards that are used across the industry. Some of these were not fit for purpose on the stations and the size of the stations that we are delivering. THD and Treherbert are classic examples where we used a very novel approach to fire strategies, for example, to mitigate, to ensure it's safe, but at the same time, we did not adopt all the onerous requirements from BS 992, for example. Just instead shows the amount of deviations we applied for and was accepted, about over 300 standards challenge, which eventually got accepted. And these two stations have also been through full ASPO, APBO assessments, and we were able to demonstrate that the necessary risk assessments and codes of practices were taken into account, and those that were not complied for we had put in necessary changes, and we've managed it in an acceptable way as per CSM. Self-assurance, I'm sure like a lot of people would be interested in knowing how this was done. Obviously, we followed, we based our engineering management plan and engineering assurance plan as per in line with a lot of the Network Rail's processes and ethos. However, we've also, changed them to suit and make them agile in order for us to be able to deliver this program through various stages of the project. We also self-delivered the project authorization strategy, which is probably a first time for a contractor organization or a delivery organization to do that. And I think we've also ensured that the assurance activities are independent. So a CRE role and a PE role is, even if it's delivered by the same person or if it's a combined role, the DPE is empowered enough to challenge those things and make sure both the roles have had significant time and opportunity to review it from their own perspective. End of the day, it is an assured, if a design is coming out, it is assured through the right processes, which are validated by our own regional assurance panels. And when these stations go through ASPO approvals, we were able to demonstrate that. Interface, again, like we had a lot of challenges around interfaces, mainly around line-side neighbors who have never seen so much of an impact and so much of a change to these stations. We had to convince and work with a lot of the line-side neighbors and ensure that they are happy. In many cases, we had to go above and beyond to satisfy some of their requirements around privacy and all sorts of things like that. Cross-discipline interfaces, PTI. Well, some of these interfaces, the way we had split CVL was delivering them in disciplines. So we had to manage that from a overall systems perspective. So we had to ensure the interfaces are managed very well. We had interface definition documents and clearly defined interfaces, which it was managed through Network Rail engineering management process, like holding a CEM LDO, a CEM type role who would manage these things. So some of the key challenges were sort of that is off. There were a lot more challenges, but then when you're trying to kind of put everything together in a span of time, you want to pick and choose. So those are sort of some of the key challenges that we encountered. For a program this scale, there has been numerous amount of, it's been a learning curve, which we've stood up to, and we've delivered a lot of that. As I was saying, like, this program has been delivered so far, and it's been completed on time. So what were the lessons we've learned whilst doing this? From an engineering management perspective, I think one of the key things we had was the alliance setup was such that the senior leadership team within the CRADE Alliance, which is TFW, AMI, Infrastructure Wales, and the infrastructure delivery partners. It was a single alliance. So it was you fail together or you succeed together. It was that was the ethos. And what it meant was we had the support of the senior leadership team to deliver or remove blockers, and to go to them quite. It was an open door policy, and we could go to them at any point, and we could highlight any issues we're having, which they would which they would do anything to intervene and ensure we are able to deliver the project without having these problems. And one of the key things was working. The way of working had changed. I don't think on the scale of project anyone has adopted no contractor organization has adopted a supply chain delivery model. So a lot of that within the organization also was to understand how people are aware of it, and constant briefings, very frequent engineering briefings to ensure people are aware of their roles and responsibilities, especially since we were supplying, we ourselves are doing the PEs and DPE roles, so we had to ensure that they are fully aware of it. We managed this through the ATW processes, aligned to Network Rail's O2009 standards. Amy also put together their own engineering management manual, which is a comprehensive set of document which talks about what each and every role needs to deliver and how it needs to deliver. And that was ingrained within the overall program and overall awareness of the roles that people are delivering. From a design and integration perspective, I think over the course of the program, from a requirements perspective, in the initial stages, the requirements were not very well set. It was mainly because of the scope that was given, and then we had to break it down into different requirements and agree with our clients. So there were some changes coming in late into the design, which were not identified at the start, or they were identified as risks, which then materialized later down the line. So as with any major programs, you always have change, one or the other coming through, and that had to be managed. I think that is something which eventually we got to doing it perfectly well. But at the beginning of at the starting stages, we did struggle a lot, and then we were able to come up with a proper way to manage it through implementing different tools that now it's like business as usual. The constructability, it was a really important thing, lessons learned for us. ECI contracts, when we engaged with the infrastructure delivery partners, I think it should have been a bit more clearer in terms of what is expected of them to input into constructability. The other thing is that I think design and construction had to be taken as a single process, as a project delivery phase, rather than a design phase and a construction phase, where they combine their input into building a buildable sort of design, which they can then deliver, which both the construction side and the design side is aware that each of them can work with. Another thing was verification and validation. I think this was quite key because because both the stations are authorizable. I think completing verification validation throughout the stages of the project, as and when it was complete, became very important. And in the beginning stages of the project, as with earlier stations, we struggled with that, as in the heat of delivery, everyone wants to be focused on delivery, completing designs, completing AFCs, and delivering. Verification validation sort of took a backseat. What that then did at entry into service stage, we had to go back and ensure the safety requirements have been met, ensure that the compliance requirements have been met. So within a short span of time, it ate away a lot in the program, which created a lot of pressure. So I think completing verification validation activities throughout the life cycle of the program, adopting a systems thinking, and ensuring that those requirements are met after each stage became really important. And finally, co-location of design and construction team. At the beginning, due to various reasons, it didn't work. COVID and various other reasons, it couldn't really happen. But I think as it progressed, we were able to get people more on site, and it was really important because then it gives you perspective, it gives you understanding of the size of what you're building, and that really came out really well.
How was that? Sorry, I'm jumping in.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, it's fine.
You mentioned a lot of design was done abroad. So when you say co-location of design teams,
Yeah.
is that the kind of DPE level
Yeah.
engineering team rather than
Yeah.
actual designers?
Yeah, actual designers. So mainly the assurance team, I would say, that because if you're rubber stamping something and say you're putting a signature on saying it's good, you need to be aware of what's on site. You need to be aware of the designs coming through are valid. Your PEs need to be aware of those things. So or combined on a combined role, both of them need to be aware of those things. We also manage this massively through using use of PIM models. So we have a 3D model of everything we've built. It's a digital twin essentially, and we were able to do that during COVID and other times, which is when most of the OLE was designed. Probably prior to that was built. So yeah, a part of that was co-location. Eventually, coming down to entry into service, and when it came to an assurance stage, the co-location really helped, where people could go out inside, see what's there, and then approve. We also used huge amount of site data in photographs and measurements and things like that to make it work, and that was really useful. And finally, construction delivery. The entire program was delivery led. This is mainly because there was a set time scale. We had to hit those deadlines. There was a set amount of funding, and we had to meet those deadlines. And it was a very delivery led program, and it was the only way we could meet cost and program timescales. The leaning in on self-assurance model really helped in the ways that we were able to cut time where it was horses for courses. So if you had a very complicated or complex design that was coming through, we could adopt a progressive assurance model where the assurance team could sit with the design team, and as they progress through different stages of packages, we could assure it. So it wasn't a case of a design is complete, chuck it over the line, 1 month to review it and 2 months to review it and DRN it and back and forth. No, it was very much a work together kind of an approach. That really helped. I think there was a lot of one thing we got. I think I'm quite proud of that we got right was the fact that the mutual trust between the delivery partners and the managing agents and the designers. So we've had friction, but at the same time we were able to work to a program. There was a full picture. Everyone is aware of the full life cycle of the project, all the processes that it needs to undergo. I've worked on the other side, and I normally find that it's very difficult for a delivery contractor or delivery partner to know what other activities Network Rail needs to do, such as like an entry into service process. You have to go through the ORR assessments or DFD, or if you are having deviations and things like that, and you have to go through the ASPO, APPO. These are not things that the delivery side sees normally, but this is where we had a single program, an integrated program, where we were able to convey all the information to them. So they had the full picture. And that created a lot of trust, and everybody knew what everyone were working to. And again, we had one of the things we got right was having a very agile engineering assurance plan. Throughout the stages of the project, we had set roles, and that kind of evolved as we went through from a design focus program to a construction focus delivery construction focus program, and then at entry into service. The roles were also kind of modified, or roles of DPE and a CEM LDO and a CEM kind of evolved as we went through. This is where we slightly changed from O2W9 and had our own engineering management plans where we detailed how that changes were taking effect. And one other thing was, as assurance and entry into service happened, meeting commitments with the regulatory body and the DFT, that made a huge difference, establishing really important relationships and also managing expectations with them really helped us gain their trust. And on both the stations, we were up against procurement timescales going beyond procurement for PA system, for example, going beyond what was required for entry into service, in which case we were able to deviate or raise a deviation from the NTSN, PRM NTSN, which was endorsed by and supported by the ORR. where we were able to demonstrate that we will put additional mitigations in place whilst the station is open to manage that risk to passengers. So that's sort of building that trust and managing that expectation with them, and also meeting set timescales that we said we would meet to, really went the long, it was really useful in managing those expectations with the regulatory bodies. Standards challenge, I think we talked about this briefly. I think one key example is the fire strategy that we use. So from a fire strategy perspective, we could have simply complied to BS 999-2, which would have required us to do various things. But applying the model of an MVP type approach, we were able to not follow BS 999-2, however, follow a different standard and still demonstrate to our safety team that the station is safe. And I think that's also, it's important that, recognizing that some of the standards cannot be written to take into account all things across, for every scenario. You cannot write a standard to do that. I used to write standards, and I'm aware of this kind of paradox that you face. You have multiple stakeholders, you have to take into account all scenarios, which is impossible. So it kind of comes to that. And this is where engineering judgment and the risk, you applying the right risk acceptance principles take into account. You could follow a similar reference system, or you could follow a code of practice, or you could apply a explicit risk assessment and take that approach wherever. So we did a lot of that to ensure we applied the right things to deliver the station in whilst compliant to the ethos of all things, make it safe, and to be able to meet the requirements set by the client. So yeah, with that sort of just a brief key takeaway points for me was for us was that self-assurance model works. But it's you gotta ensure that you have the independence, the DPEs, the PEs are independent, are empowered to undertake those roles independently without having pressure of delivery. Pressure of delivery is good, but not compromising the required level of quality. And how you do that is what would define whether your self-assurance model works or not. Multidisciplinary integration, this was really important, applying the right tools to do that. You can have remote teams based out of all sorts of places. To a level, you need to have a co-location, but you also need to use modern day tools such as BIM level 2 compliance, and also PIM models to ensure that you're able to collaborate with multi-teams. If you are to do a self-delivery and managing, take the role of a managing agent, then a culture change is important. It's important to understand this is a different kind of approach to what you have been doing as solely as a managed contractor or a managed delivery agent. So that's another thing. So if you have to undertake the responsibilities of which Network Rail would traditionally do, then you got to ensure that you understand what they are. And if not, that can really have a massive impact. And I think I touched on this before. Design and construction needs to be treated as an integrated program delivery phase rather than separate. Where if it's a compressed program, then sometimes both activities happen at the same time. This is where you need to have established relationship between your construction teams and your delivery teams and your design teams, and they work hand in hand to ensure that what they're building and what they're putting on site is managed effectively. This also is important for interfaces between different disciplines, interfaces between boundaries if it's a geographical split. Authorization. We were able to cut down timescales on authorization process massively. It was more of a requirement towards the end as the program compressed. We were able to achieve it through applying, the right kind of assurance process. In our case, it was progressive assurance. So we had our independent assessment plans were written down to kind of support progressive assurance. Our project authorization strategy was built around that. We had commissioning strategies and various other documents and processes put together in order to be able to cut down on those big time scales that you require for authorization. So traditionally, you have your designs, you apply for a design ISV, you finish your construction, then you prove that you built to design, and therefore you get. In our case, I think a lot of that has been compressed together, but we were able to manage and get the authorization within the compliance by having a sort of progressive assurance strategy. We brought the ORR and the DFT along the journey as well, so which helped a lot. And finally, I think there's a bit of a cliche, assembling the right team and supporting the right behaviors. I can't expand on that because a lot of the people that work with me, work in our team. I always say we have the best team that we've got in engineering, because they were really there. They went above and beyond to deliver PhD. They were aware of the pressures. They were aware of the importance of delivering that route within the timescales that we've asked for, and they knew the importance of doing that for the company and for the Welsh government. And they bought into that idea and were able to work with them above and beyond to deliver that project. Far too many people to be named, but yeah. That brings me to the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Questions?
Normally we'd have like a room full of people going, "Hooray!" Big round of applause. So thanks very much.
Right.
Minimal clapping. So we don't have any questions in the chat, but I as I always do, I always ask a question or two. So I'll jump in. So the first one is, with all the changes in infrastructure along that line of route, what considerations were given to maintenance? So things like additional access points, or how did you consider that in the grand sort of scheme of it all?
So access arrangements were surveys were carried out, and we had surveys carried out. So both the stations, both Treherbert and Dinas, they had existing assets over there. We tried to utilize as much as possible the existing access arrangement for the existing assets that are there. We've carried out renewals where renewal of the access arrangements, access areas, where we were able to, where it was required. For constructing Treherbert, it was a terminus station, so access was a bit more easier in that area. Whereas for Dinas, we tried to reduce. I think you will see in the picture, we had utilized freight trains and rail lines to deliver the materials to site. That was the old platform that was there. This is the new construction site you can see here, and this was all the old where the old platform renewals are happening. So you can see materials being delivered by train.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking that, you've created more assets effectively on this line of route now.
Yeah.
So did that mean you had to increase the number of access points?
We had to, yeah.
More critical access points.
Yes, I think that was part of the access strategy that was put together, and this was agreed with the infrastructure manager, how we would deliver critical access points were enhanced where it wasn't available. So I think Taftswell is probably a good example, where Fort Bledon had to be modified in order to make it. That was a overbridge and road which had to be developed to make it better for higher capacity roads and stuff like that. So yes, we undertook as much as possible. We tried to use the existing access points, but where it was, it also depended on. If I go to on the map, you can see, like for example, the key driver here, the requirement was 4 trains per hour from every route. So you can see Ponty, this area, would experience about 12 trains per hour, where currently it's 3 trains. So getting an access there or working around that area or going down is probably this section would have been more difficult. So there would have been higher interventions and higher, better access arrangements put there. So it was sort of horses for courses in a way.
Yeah.
And that's where Taftswell earlier I mentioned is. So yeah, depending on the usage, the impact of interventions, we've developed the areas where it's access required.
I think it's probably worth mentioning that there is a RAPS and compound team in the project who look after all the RABs for delivering the works, and obviously the compounds for all the different contractors and delivery partners to deliver their works. And then, as said, also a stage strategy, depending on the works being delivered, what was needed and how those have been decommissioned.
So are the maintenance teams for this area Amy staff?
Yes.
Yeah, MBTI. So yeah, W.
And they're brought into every meeting, every decision, every sign off.
Consulted them.
Absolutely. No, they go through the same process. So if you have a RAP and you have a AIP and a Form A for that, if you're building a new one, they would sign up to it.
Yeah.
There are IDCs. So not necessarily on Walkden Network Rail. I don't think we necessarily invited the RAM team to IDC to detail design. They usually see the AIP, sign it off, and then you deliver. But in our case, we invited the IM and the infrastructure stations operations team to our IDC to ensure they know exactly what they're getting. Constructability reviews they were invited to, so they've been brought along the journey. It made things a lot easier when it came to things like hazard transfers. They knew what they were taking over. When it came to things like walkouts, they knew exactly where they were to go. They could turn up to site anytime, and it's within their patch, and they could see what's going on. So it was quite.
And although this is self-delivered and the IM is part of AMI, they're part of the self-delivery process, we literally can't proceed to AFC without the IM agreement.
Yeah.
So they are just as much as a stickler as the RAM is.
Yeah.
And if they say no, it's no. And their opinion is what we have to base everything on. We can be halfway through the stage F delivery, grip 5 delivery, and they say I don't like it. And we have to change it.
Yeah.
I think with self-delivery and self-assurance, a lot of the questions was how do you ensure that how are you marking your homework, and also how are you ensuring that, if your right hand is building and your left hand has to accept it, or how do you do that? But in our case, we have processes written down, and everyone is held accountable to that. So end of the day, if you're facing the man in the curly wig, then you got to demonstrate that you had the competence to do that job, and you have followed all the right processes which have been written down and in stone to ensure that that's safe. So that is 100% done.
And competence is key, isn't it?
Competence is key. We follow the same ATW processes, and in fact, it's quite rigorous. You got to demonstrate that you've worked. DPs appoint CEMs, appoints CREs, the PEs, and show that they've got the right competence. And we have a robust mentorship sort of arrangement where we have CEMs under mentorship, and all roles and responsibilities required to deliver the program.
Yeah,
we have a process to manage the validity of those appointments. We have about 325 appointments in place for the project, which covers all the engineering roles through AMI, but also through all the IDPs. So it's literally looked as an engineering fraternity there, where everybody has been appointed. There is a validity for that appointment, and we have clarity on when that needs to be revisited. So
we deploy Power BI very effectively on the project, and massive reporting tool. We use it very much for monitoring our ATW when things expire, whose ATW is expiring tomorrow. Just log in and check. So it's very known and
visible,
very visible, and the responsible LDE type raw DEM department engineering manager is monitoring that constantly with the DPEs and with the CEMs, and it's also part of my own KPI to ensure that all my project engineers and CREs have valid ATW. So it's quite well managed in that sense.
I did have no questions have come up, so unless the guys here, I will carry on. So the remote stations, and I say remote, they're in the valleys. But they got lifts. So how is that managed? Because I guess the stations aren't staffed all the time. So how is the station managed in terms of people using the lifts, and can they be used all the time, or does it need station staff there at key times?
No. So it's an unstaffed station, has PA. So it has two-way PA. So also, if anyone wants to talk to a person, a real person, they could use the help point. So it has a two-way communication there with the CVL ICC. So in terms of using the lift, it's one thing I forgot to mention is the station has full PRM compliance in terms of braille and prismatic and that sort of signage. So even a persons of reduced mobility or impaired can actually look at and understand the signage and be guided to different aspects of the station. So same applies for the lifts. It can be used at any point in time. There is no, except in terms of emergencies or in terms of in case of fire, if it dropped down, in which case we provided either an exit route, a step-free exit route, or refuge areas where PRM.
Do TFW as the TOC have someone available to go to that station if someone's stuck in a lift, say, or if there's a need to?
Yeah, there's instructions in there. It's actually, funny enough, it's actually a project requirement that if in case of emergency there's contact details and things like that listed out in signage and things like that in braille for anyone that needs to use it. This information is available at help points, which is then has wayfinding there to guide them to the help points. They could call from the help points. There's one for information. We've used dual communication type help.
Just wondering, if somebody's using that lift and it breaks down, and I guess there's comms in there.
They can, yes.
Would TFW have a kind of roaming operations person that can be there within a certain period of time to help get them out?
They could use emergency services at the time, and they would have remote operations key, and CVL ICC would be able to operate them. For toilet pods have that. It's a specific requirement. We're trying to work with them to ensure that can be implemented. Yeah. So they have a specific requirements for them to remote operate certain aspects of the station.
Okay.
Gates, for example. We don't have ticket machines everywhere, but gates or toilet pods, classic example. In case of a power failure, they should be able to operate it from backup power and things like that. So they have.
Okay. And I will ask one more because I'm getting my money's worth. So derogations. Mm-hmm. You mentioned a high number of derogations, and I guess potentially some of them to Network Rail standards.
Most of them, yeah.
Most of them. So, as a Network Rail person, I'm wondering how many of those derogations could potentially lead to a change in standards as a result of the work you've done?
Yeah, about 300 odd derogations, 10 to RIS, and rest are mostly Network Rail standards. They could result in standards change. It's again, one of the things I want to highlight there is not everything may be applicable to other parts of the network because, for example, electrification, discontinuous electrification is not massively used everywhere else. So, and it's novel and new as a system. So we could have wide varieties of wide amount of derogations simply associated with discontinuous electrification, which in a future standard, if you do want to create a new standard, you could use as reference as to what we've done here and what aspect of the current standards we've changed to be able to achieve that. And you could look at what risk assessments we've carried out and how we've demonstrated that. By the deviations that we've affected are essentially whatever else we have done instead of those standards requirement, how is that safe? So you could look, we've done risk assessments, and our OLE system is authorizable and it's all gone through the right sausage machine.
Yeah, in a world of minimum viable product where we challenge everything for to do the least amount of work, I guess.
Whilst delivering need to do. Yeah, whilst delivering what a safe sort of infrastructure.
I just wonder, do we close the loop on this? So you've applied for derogations, which have been granted. what discussion then goes on within Network Rail, you know, as the standard owners as to, right, when we revise this standard, we could add something in there to give other people the benefit of that.
I used to write standards, and I used to work in Milton Keynes for electrification for the contact systems team. Usually we have a derogations register, and all the list of derogations will be packed up. And whenever the pile becomes certain height, they end up releasing a standards it affects a standards change, and they'd go and do an upgrade. Usually it's very high. I don't know how, because we don't have to go to Network Rail to derogate.
That's kind
because
of what I was thinking.
we have our own AWAP or SRP, which kind of works through that, and that's how we manage it. We could share that. I don't know what arrangements are there between RIM, who can share what the derogations have been, what applications have been made, and on what basis it's been granted to Network Rail if they want to adopt it.
You know, is industry improvements.
Absolutely.
I think that's the kind of thing that should happen.
Yeah.
Because it's interesting, you've just chosen to adopt Network Rail standards. So
it's a code of practice.
It would make sense for you to influence them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can't see any questions.
It'd be interesting to find out how many standard challenges we put in for the deviations that we put in place.
Yeah, so as a standards challenge process, we could communicate what changes we are implementing and why to Network Rail if they want to adopt it.
Yeah,
essentially all 300 we could, if it is.
That's what I'm saying.
We could pile it together and issue as a standards challenge, and they could then decide what really applies to the rest of the network.
Absolutely,
and what may not.
Yeah,
but it's in their gift to do that.
Some of them will be very bespoke, as you say.
Yeah,
if it's discrete electrification. Or, but yeah, no, that'd be an interesting circle of life to close out.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to draw the meeting to a close on the basis there's no online questions. I don't know whether we've had some communication issues around this meeting, but the numbers are much lower than normal. So, and I've seen a few people kind of joining halfway through, which makes me think maybe we've had a problem with the invite. I don't know. But either way, this will be available on the PWI's YouTube channel. So I'm sure, you know, if anybody's got any questions, they'll be hunting down your email address and firing them across. But thanks very much for coming in. Really appreciate it. You know, the whole piece around CVL is interesting in terms of an operating model, if you like, and something that's quite alien to a lot of us.
It's one of a kind across. I mean, it would be because it's the first time someone's done that. So
I think it's been good over the past 12 months. This is maybe the third presentation around CVL.
I think it's also important that we do more of this sort of in a way, because not a lot of people seem to be aware of the massive thing that's going on in Wales, but it is one of those things that it would be good for us as well to make more of this. And
I think the innovation and the new types of rolling stock that have been introduced is it's really interesting stuff. So thank you very much, and colleagues from Amy in the room. Hope everyone enjoyed that online, and we'll see you again in 4 weeks' time. Thanks very much.